So that way, when we create strings, or meaning things of information or numbers, we actually set our code or our answer or our characters, we set it to some type of variable. There are three main types of variables that we use in Java. So I'm going to put a TV and three main types of variables we use. Sorry. Sorry, I have auto. Variable types we use in Java. So there's just three main ones. And I'm going to list all three. So if you guys need some, you can give yourself some white space, but I'm going to kind of jump down here. I'm going to move this up. And I'm going to just list them, and then we're going to talk about them and give some examples. So the first one is called a string. And I'm going to give myself some white space here and go down and do the second one is called an int or integer. And then I'm just going to go down a little bit more, guys, and do the third one here is called a double. And they're very basic types of variables. So we have got string, int, and double. And this will help us to do calculations. And this will also help us to, at some point, to get user input. Okay, so a string. A variable string is used to store things in quotes or text. So I'm just going to put a little arrow, or you can do an equal sign or anything. And it's just to tell you it's used to store things in quotes. So like in our quotes, when we print line or something, it's used to store things in quotes. So when we think of string, we think of like a large, or like a string of pearls or a string of beads. A string of characters is what it's used to store for. Anything that's in our quotation marks in our print line, that's what it's storing. It's storing all that information. It's kind of like a holding place. That's what variables are like. So to code that, I'm just going to put code. To code that, it is going to look something like, if we had a string, that's going to be a capital S, and we're going to create a variable for a string. So you can use any letter, you can use a word, but it can't be unique to Java. So you can't say, hey, I'm going to assign the variable string to the variable type string. So you can't write string and string. Most people use letters when we're coding. So you're saying, hey, the variable called S is a string. And the string is going to be maybe hello world. And then a semicolon. You need the semicolon at the end because it's code and we want our computer or our compiler to recognize this line. And so basically we're saying, hey, hello world is going to be assigned to the variable S, and that variable is a string. So our coding or our computer needs to know what kind of variable it is. So that's why we have the word string. And we're saying anything in these quotation marks. We could have our name, we could have John, we could have this is computer programming. Anything in these quotation marks is all now going to be assigned the letter S. So that way, when we system print the line out, so capital S for system, dot out, dot print line, bless you. Now when we say, hey, let's print out that string, we can just use the letter S inside the parentheses and a semicolon. So you're saying, computer, just print out whatever the variable S is. And then what it does is it says, oh, now I need to recognize what is that variable S. S is a string, and it's assigned the words hello world. So you could have a string called string Bob. And Bob, in quotation marks, has hello, this is my name. And then do a system printout and just use, instead of S, you could put the word Bob. And we're going to practice that today. So, but that's how you would code right here. So if, for example, we had a quiz later on this week, I might ask you, what kind of variable is S? You could tell me just by looking at a code like this. You could say, it's a string. And I might ask, hey, if we're printing out the variable S, what would be the output? And you would tell me, hello world. I know, it seems weird, like why?
Wants to know,
yeah?
Kieran wants to know if it would be something that you would set yourself.
Yes, yep. So you can, like you guys, you mean like if you could just type in at like a different letter than S? Like it could be anything you want. Yep. Anything you want. It doesn't have to be the letter S. So for example, I'm just going to do example down here. I kind of ran out of room here. If another example was string, that is unique to Java. Good question. String is unique to Java, so we have to use the word string. Capital S, string. You could create a variable called, let's see. I'm going to use Mrs. Well, Mary. That could be your variable name. It doesn't have to just be a letter. And you might put equal sign in quotation marks. My name is Mary. And then do closing quotation mark and closing semicolon. So maybe that's your line of code where you're saying whatever, or the variable Mary is now going to be assigned this string, my name is Mary. And so whenever I call upon the variable Mary, that's what it's going to print. So I might have a system dot out dot print line, and then in parentheses Mary. So I know it seems like, well, why wouldn't we just put the string inside the print line like we did with all the assignments we've had before? The reason why we're assigning in a variable is if we want to print this string multiple times, now we just have to say print line Mary. So it's a variable. So all we just have to do is call upon that variable anytime we want to reference back to my name is Mary. Also, if we're doing some kind of calculation, it's sometimes easier to use the variable. Or when we eventually get to user input, meaning your audience or whoever's using your program is inputting information, it assigns it to a variable here. So that way, if it's, let's say the user typed their social security number, it could then be assigned to a string. If they typed in a whole sentence about programming, it would be assigned to the variable Mary or something like that. So that's why we're learning just basic variables and how to assign them. So a string has to do with text or things in between the quotation marks. It doesn't have to do with returning an actual number. It's more of characters it's looking at. So if we were talking about returning or using some kind of number, like a value versus characters, we would use the next type, and that's called an int. And this is used to store integers. So you'll find a lot of times in school or in program, they abbreviate. So if you remember what integers are, they're whole numbers, not fractions. They can be positive or negative. That's where math comes in if you're wondering. If you're wondering why we're not using the word number, it's because number is very broad, where integers is very more specific as far as that it's a whole number and nothing with a decimal point or anything. Okay, sample code. Might look something like you're going to declare your variable. So this is the declaration, int. Now you're going to use whatever the variable is. You could use the letter, I think you guys can use X. I think X will work. You could use any kind of letter I. You could use letter I. Or you could be more descriptive and maybe say, we're talking about age. So I'm going to do int, and my variable is going to be age. And that variable is going to be assigned a number, maybe 17. So now we're saying the number 17 is assigned to the variable age. Age is an integer. So age is just a variable. So you could also have something like an integer. You're declaring an integer, and maybe the variable you're using is the letter A. And you're saying, hey, that letter A is going to be the number 103. So those are just basically saying, hey, I'm assigning the number 103 to the variable called A. A is an integer. Just like this, I'm saying, hey, the number 17 is now assigned to the variable called age, and it is an integer. So as you can see, you can use words, or you can use a letter. And then maybe you have a system print out. That print line. And then you might say, I'm going to print the variable called age. And then maybe the next line, I'm going to print the variable called A. So if I ran this program, it would print out 17 and 103. And we're going to practice this as well, but this is great. This will set us up for when we do some user input. And you'll find, folks, that in programming, programmers like to use variable types. They don't necessarily like to do straight print line and things in quotation marks. They like to assign text, they like to assign numbers, they like to assign input to a variable. So that way, if anything changes, all I have to change is 17 or 103, and I don't have to go back and change whatever's in my print line. And then finally, we have the word double. And double has to use with storing floating points or decimals. So double, I'm going to move this up. Am I going too fast? Do you want me to slow down?
Good.
We're good? Okay. Double is used to store floating points. Floating points, or what you would call decimals, or numbers with decimals. So that way, if you had like the number pi, or the letter, using pi, you would store, it would print out all those numbers. So it needs to know the difference between a double and an integer. Believe it or not, your computer is not that smart for it to decipher between, hey, this is a number with a lot of decimal points afterwards, versus this is an integer as a whole, and it's only a whole number. Okay. So an example of this is we need to declare. So I'm going to say this is the code. You might declare your double. So to declare your double, you're going to have a lowercase word called double. So this is the declaration right there, double. Then you say, what's my double variable going to be? What letter or variable name am I going to choose? You can choose the letter D. And now you're going to say, hey, the letter D is going to be some double number or some decimal number. So maybe you have negative 324.62. So I know my computer knows that it's going to have to output some kind of decimal, and that's why we use the word double to declare it. So a sample, oops, you need a semicolon after that. So another sample might be the word, you're going to declare double, and maybe you use the word Jacob. And Jacob is now going to be assigned a number, and maybe it's 837. So this is saying, I have a variable called Jacob. Jacob is now being assigned the number 837. So whenever I call upon Jacob, the variable Jacob, it's always going to be in reference to the number 837. Oh, that's not a double. 0.63. Sorry, guys. That's a double. That's a period. Sorry. And it's okay if you assign something as a double and it doesn't have a decimal point. But my example is pretty bad. So 837.63 would be assigned to the variable called Jacob. And I know that it's going to output some type of decimal point because I'm assigning it as a double variable. That's a lot to take in. So I could call upon this, same thing like we do in the other ones. System, that print. And now I just call upon the variable, maybe the letter D. And I can also do the same thing for Jacob. Just a reminder, in programming, typing the exact same letter or word is important. So for example, if I had a lowercase j for Jacob and I declared it as an uppercase j, it's not going to know what the lowercase Jacob is. So you need to be very careful about how you're declaring your variables. If you spelled Jacob wrong in your declaration, and then you asked your program to now print out the variable Jacob, but you spelled it different from here to here, it won't print it out. So just keep that in mind. Your computer compiles only what you're telling it to. And another notation, sorry guys. Another notation for this is if you are going to do some type of scientific notation. So you could also do a double and do you guys know scientific notation? Okay. So let's say you were going to declare, I'm going to move this up a little bit. This is another sample. Maybe you're going to say double D is 1.4566, and then you're going to use the letter E, 23. That would be the same as the scientific notation. So same as saying 1.4566 times 10 to the 23rd power. So this has to do with science. You might have some assignments that use scientific notation, and that's where this E comes in. So I'm just going to put comment scientific. Scientific notation. So we added a few math terms into this. If you guys really like computer science or programming, and you're at I think it even happens if you're at a college, and maybe not so much as a trade program, but doing something more of a larger scale of study. So even at community college or a four-year university or whatever, if you're doing coding, a lot of times you're going to be asked to do quite a bit of math too. In fact, most computer scientists are close to either being a math major or minor, just because you need just as much math as you do as coding sometimes, or understanding computer programming. So sometimes you'll find that a lot of math, if you really enjoy math, you'll probably do well in computer programming. If you're not into math, it doesn't mean you can't program, it just means it might be a little bit harder, because it does require quite a bit of logical thinking, which I admit sometimes I struggle with. But if you're a logical thinker, this is usually a little bit easier to grasp. Just another reminder, and I'm not going to put this in your notes, but when we talk about declaring variables, so like how we use the letter D, how we use the word Jacob, you can use pretty much any name you want. However, do not use things that have special characters like a dot. Like, don't use something that has a decimal point in it. Don't use things that have a combination of letters and numbers, because it's not going to know the difference. Don't use numbers as your variable, because it's not going to know the difference between your variable declaration and the number you're using. Don't use hyphens or underscores. Don't use spaces. So make sure that you understand when you're declaring a variable, you're going to just stick to all words that are all one word, or a letter that is not unique to Java. And you'll know it won't run if you use something that's unique to Java. So. All right, so that's our notes. You can keep them onto the side if you want, because we're going to reference back to them. but we're not writing anymore. So that's all good. What I'd like you guys to do now is I'd like you to go to Repellent. And we have 3 assignments that I'm going to give you time in class. And in fact, maybe I'll make them due tomorrow. We're running out of time. So what I'd like you guys to do is go to practice variable assignments, P2, practice variable. Don't go to A1, or sorry, don't go to A2, A2.1, A2.2. Let's just go to the practice and we're going to practice. Okay. So hopefully you are here, practice variable types. And we're going to just do a quick practice. If we run out of time today, I'll move our assignments that we were going to work on today. I'll move them to tomorrow, and we'll work on them tomorrow. So there will not be any homework, at least on these 3. Okay. Are we in Repellent?
Yes.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah. You should have P2 practice variable types at the top. You should have class main, and it automatically defaults to a system printout line, hello world. You can erase that if you want. You can erase the hello world. So I'm going to do that. Give myself some visual white space. You might want to comment, good practice. Maybe I'm going to comment and say, this is a practice. And we're going to do some practicing. So the first thing we talked about was a variable string. So to declare a string, we're going to use a capital S string, so uppercase string. And then in our sample, we did the letter S. But why don't you guys pick any letter you want? I'm going to use the letter A. And now I'm going to use the equal sign and quotation marks. And this is what I'm assigning the letter A to. I might assign saying, this is a program. Now, strings do have a certain set length, so you couldn't necessarily sit here and write a whole novel, but you can write quite a bit. So, string A equals, this is a program. Sorry, can't spell. And then at the end, I need a semicolon. All right, I'll make it a little bit bigger here. So this is my string. The words, this is a program, are assigned to the variable A. And in my code, I'm saying the variable A is a string. Next, let's print this out. That print line. Okay, so that is my first declaration of a string. I'm going to run. And it should output at the bottom, this is a program. Since we're all mostly new to programming, it's also important to notice that when we declare variables, good programming or good coding suggests that we declare all our variables at the top of our driving function. So if I was, let's say, going to create another variable, I would probably put it right at the top with my other variable that I created. So you'll find in programming that when you declare variables, they're at the top, and then anything you want to do with them is behind it. So let's say we're going to declare another string. I'm going to declare another string. Somebody give me a word.
Fish.
Did you say fish? Yeah, fish. Fish is now my new variable. I'm going to say fish are great. And then I need a semicolon after that. And then now, maybe I now want to do an output system. Print. And I'm going to call upon my fish variable. And I'm going to run this. Oops, sorry guys. I'm going to run. And there it is. So it called upon, this is a program, fish are great pets. If I wanted to flip those outputs, I can change it now. I can also do, hey, instead of A first, maybe I have fish first. Maybe I have two fishes. I'm asking, and then an A. Run that. And now I should get outputting fish twice and, oops. What did I not see? Cannot find my symbol. Oh, because I have print line wrong. Sorry. Run that. See, and now it says, hey, I'm printing out the string fish twice and then printing out the string A once. So let's say we wanted to also include an integer. So I'm going to declare an int. So I'm going to declare an int, int. And then somebody can give me a variable, maybe the letter I, equals 657. You'll notice the variable int becomes bright blue. That means it's very unique. It's unique to coding. I don't know why string doesn't show up, but string should. Or string should be bright blue, but it doesn't for this. But you'll notice int does, turns a bright blue. And maybe we're going to call upon int, or the letter I. So maybe down here, I might do system out.print. I call upon the variable I. If I run this, I should get fish are great pets, fish are great pets. This is a program. And then the integer 657. If I wanted to declare a double, I could do that. I could do double. Maybe the letter, or maybe I use the word Bob. And Bob is going to now be assigned an integer, or sorry, a double. So maybe I have 976.34. I'm going to print that out. System that out, dot print, and it's going to be the word Bob. If I run this, I should get fish are great pets, fish are great pets. This is a program. My integer 657 and my double 978.34. Now, if for some reason, you guys, your integer was not a whole number and you actually forgot or you made a mistake and declared the letter I to an integer and you want it to be a double, let's just, for this example, let's make this integer an actual double. Let's say 63. So it's now 657.63. If I run this, I should get an error saying my variable I is not an integer. And it says incompatible types, possibly a lousy conversion from a double to an int. So it's telling me, hey, the number you gave me cannot be an integer, cannot be stored as an integer. So 657.63, you're assigning it to the letter I, but then you're saying the letter I is an integer, and your computer's saying, no, it's not. It's not the correct variable type. So you could do two things. You could go back and change the letter I to be an actual integer, or you could change the letter I to say, hey, it's a double. So you could go back and do, this is a double, and it should work. Yep. Or you could go back and say it's an integer and change 657.63 into an actual integer or whole number and make it 657. And now you should be also able to combine what you're printing out. So maybe I have system print line fish. Let's combine those here. I'll do it right up here. Do a system out that print line. Maybe I'm going to combine and say I'm going to output fish plus A, which is, A was a number, right? Or no, A was a string. So if I hit print out both of those, let's see if it works. There. If you want to combine two variables or two statements, you can use the plus sign. So see on this line 11, how I'm doing a printout of fish and A, I use the plus sign to do that. It's saying, hey, I'm printing out the variable fish, which is fish are great pets. And then I'm also going to print out the variable A, which is this is a program. If I wanted a space in between those, I could use quotation marks, a space and another quotation mark, space, and use a plus sign. I could do that as well. So now there's a space between the two string variables. Fish are great pets. This is a program.
Oh, I just want to try.
Questions?
Do you want them to just submit their practice they just did?
Sure.
Assignment?
Yep, sure, you guys can do that. That's fine. If you don't want to submit it, that's okay. If you want to use this as a reference. If you guys submit, unfortunately, I don't know if you guys can view it after you submit it. So if you want, I can quick go through and unsubmit.
I think you can view it, but then
they can't change it, right? Okay.
You can't, and then you have to unsubmit it to make changes.
Okay. I just want to make sure you guys can view some of these examples. And I'm going to comment this. This prints out both variables. We actually do have some time, and you guys have like 10 minutes. So you could start, if you want, you could go back to Repellent. And the assignments today, you could start working on it, would be variable double, variable string, and variable int. So they're just separated, they're just practice. I want to make sure you guys can do this on your own. and then you can submit them in. Ideally, I think you probably could get them done in the next 10 minutes. I'll give you a little time. I'll maybe tomorrow give you like maybe 5 minutes in class to finish it up. So I will make sure they're not, so that way we can get them done and we can start doing a few more things with strings or with variable types. But practice those 3 things. And if you have any questions and you want to just ask me tomorrow in class, you can do that as well, or you can shoot me an email. But I will give you guys the last 10 minutes of class to work on these 3 assignments. Again, even though I said they're due by class tomorrow, I'll give you the first 5 minutes of class to finish it up too. So do what you can yet today, and then you can work on it a little bit first thing in the morning during class.
Do you want them to do the A2 variable double assignment as well?
Yes. Yep. All 3.
Okay.
A2 variable double, A2.1 variable string, and A2.2 variable int.
Oh.
Are they the same? I don't think. No, that one.
You're gonna have more. They'll have some time tomorrow.
Yeah, 5
well?
minutes.
Okay.
Yep. But you do have 10 minutes right now. So look at your notes.
The instructions in the variable double assignment, is that what you want them to do? The instructions that are in there?
Yes. I believe it says it, right? Let me look. Okay, in double, it says, write a single line of code that will create a double precision or a double using, sorry, that should be 10 to the 16th power, guys.
So it is multiplication? That's what you're saying?
It is a scientific notation.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
That's what we thought at first.
Yep, and I can put that in there. You're going to create they call it double, I also call it double precision, but you're just going to create a double called P. And then you will need to output these things, obviously. But scientific notation can be using the letter E, if you don't remember. That's the last thing we wrote.
When Ms. Bauman, when we are typing in for the double, they type in E for the scientific notation.
Does it not recognize it?
Yeah, it's not recognizing it. It just types exactly.
That's okay. That's fine.
Types 16.
Yep, that's fine if it just does the exact same.
Okay.
That's good.
Yeah, that's what it's supposed to be.
So do we just submit
It's
it?
not typing.
Yep.
So like the E is showing the term.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, she said it's okay.
Yep. So what it's going to do is it's just basically saying, hey, the E is correct for scientific notation, because it's not going to recognize, I don't think, that. But at least it's saying it's not recognizing that E is a letter. It's recognizing it as a notation of scientific notation. So you're good. Yep.
Okay. So,
Fishing board.